that all teachers need to have in order to utilize their standards-based gradebook and have it print. And then we're going to talk a little bit about philosophy, just so that we're all speaking the same language when we start working with teachers. So those are the big two purposes, really working with our instructional technologists, because some of them are new to this role, and our instructional facilitators, making sure that we're all speaking the same language as we work with our K-2 teachers this year. So just to kind of give you a purpose for today. Any big picture questions before we go ahead and jump in? All right. Like I said, Cam's going to be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions, please throw those in there and we'll try to get those answered. We'll also have a Q&A if we have time, or I can stay on for a little while and try to answer certain questions for you as well. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. So one of the first things, I'm going to share my screen with you all. Let's see if it'll share. All right, can someone unmute their mic and tell me if you see my screen yet?
You're good.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, thank you very much. You never know sometimes. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we will jump in. And so we're going to switch back and forth a little bit. I'll come back to the slide presentation and then I'll pop out and show you a few things. If you need access to today's presentation, Cam, I'm telling you, Cam has been awesome. And there is a bit.ly down here at the bottom of the page for you. I'll let you take just a moment if you want to write that down. And Cam, if you could drop that in the chat as well, just so teachers have access, or IFs and ITs have access.
You are good.
All right, awesome. And so really our purpose is to develop those leaders in the building that understand the philosophy, but also some of the basic how-tos behind standards-based grading. We are not by any means asking you to be like the gradebook guru and troubleshoot every issue, but if we can help alleviate some of the minor pieces behind the standards-based gradebook, I think we're going to be in a really good spot this year. So first things first, instructional facilitators, most of you had rights, I believe, in Power Teacher last year to go in and view teacher gradebooks. However, I know we have some new instructional facilitators, and our new instructional technologists may not have had this role last year. So we want to show you how to go into Power Teacher Pro and shadow a teacher's gradebook. You can go in and you can view the settings, you can view their gradebook. This does not give you editing rights. So if you're an IF or an IT and a teacher comes and asks if you can just set theirs up for you, you cannot. You have view rights, you do not have edit rights. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to walk you from step one, how I would go in to do this. And so if I am on the Winston-Salem homepage, I would begin by going to Staff Student Links. And from Staff Student Links, I'm going to go to my home-based apps. And we should all be kind of familiar with this process because this is also how we've been getting into Canvas. So you are going to need that number to get into your NC Ed Cloud account. I never had it memorized as a teacher, but I sure do now. And you would log in with that number. And then once you get into your NC Ed Cloud portal, you're going to see several tiles. We've been using Canvas a whole lot. You see that one up there. There are several of these tiles that have the P on them for Power School. When we are shadowing, the tile that we want to use is this dark colored square with the rainbow P, and it says Power School Admin. That's the option that we want to use. So once I go in and I do that, your screen should look very similar to mine. I was in here playing this morning, and that's why Louisville Elementary is up, because I was making sure I always go back and make sure I remember all the steps. Up here, if you are assigned to a school or you are an IT and you are assigned to multiple schools, you should be able to click up here. So if you just have one, your one school will come up. But if you're at 2 different schools, like I know Jennifer Fernbach, she's split between Morgan and Jefferson Elementary, she should have both of those schools up there. If you do not, in just a moment, I'm going to give you an opportunity to pause and practice. If you do not have the schools that you need, or they are incorrect, or you're not able to access the admin portal, when we take attendance at the end, we're going to have you put in that information so that I can get it back to our program manager for student information systems. So don't panic, we can still get it fixed. We were working on it yesterday. So you should see your school up here. Like I said, if you're at multiple schools, you should see both of them. When I want to go in and shadow a particular teacher, I'm going to come to the left-hand side, and I'm going to go down to teacher schedules. You should see a list of all of the teachers within that school populate. I'm going to go down to a teacher, Miss Palmer. I know she is a kindergarten teacher, so I'm going to click on her name. And once I click on Miss Palmer, I'm going to see all of the classes that she has. In order to shadow her, I'm not going to click into any of these classes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Power Teacher. And what that does is it then brings up a view very similar to what teachers would see when they go in to input grades. And if you were in the classroom using Power Teacher Pro, this screen should look familiar to you as well. I can then go in and I can look at the various grade books that that teacher has, but I can also go in and check her settings, which is what we're going to do in just a moment. So I want to pause, especially for new ifs, even for our old ifs that have been in the school system for a while, but maybe have moved schools, and our ITs. And I want to pause and give you an opportunity to see if you can go in and shadow teachers. So I'm going to pause here. And I'm going to give you just a few minutes to go in and to try that out before we move on. I'm going to set a timer. If anyone has major issues or can't remember a step, you can unmute yourself and I'll be happy to go back and show you again how to do that. But as we work with teachers, being able to shadow and make sure that their settings are correct is one of the #1 ways that we help troubleshoot issues for teachers. So I'm going to start a timer just to keep us rolling. But if you have major issues or you cannot remember a step, please unmute yourself and ask a question.
Amy, this is Loris at Ashley. On the login to Rapid Identity, I have a scan a barcode for password. Is that?
Yeah, so for our K2 students or younger students, there is a way for admin within that portal. So like ITs and then certain people within the technology department. At one point, I think media coordinators had those rights as well, but they can generate barcodes or those QR codes that younger students can scan.
Oh, I understand that. This is for me when I'm logging in.
You don't have a place to put in your Ed Cloud number?
It's, no,
I got sent home. I
put in my number and
issue.
password, and now it's asking for a
Yeah.
one-time
It's all good.
password code. And I have a QR code on the screen.
Have you
And I've been getting in fine up until today. Maybe it's just me.
I have not seen that.
Okay. I'll keep figuring it out.
Has anyone else had that same issue today? I've
Ashley,
logged in and out multiple times today.
Marie just said if you're in IT and had your permissions reset, you may see that option.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have my microphone plugged in. Just
Marie, you're
in process. What was that?
It may have just been me, but you were breaking up.
Oh, okay. So for instructional technologists, they are changing our password permission level, and that causes that QR thing to come up. So if that person who was saying they were having the QR code, if you will message me, I can walk you through how to get around it or set you up with the person to fix it.
Awesome. Thank you, Marie.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I will.
Ashley, this is Shannon from Easton and Ibrahim. My sound cut out a little bit before. Once we get into Power School, and I can see my two schools up at the top, where do we see the teacher list? I missed that step.
Absolutely. Yeah, so let me show you that one more time.
Okay, thank you.
You're good. Yep. So when I go in here, and you'll see there's, like I said, I was playing with Louisville earlier because I know who some of their teachers are. Over on the left-hand side, to get to your list of teachers, you're going to click on teacher schedules. Under functions, it's that last option. And once I click on teacher schedules, that's when it's going to be in alphabetical order. All of your teachers should populate. And then you can click through there. If you're not familiar with your staff, you can click through and try to find a kindergarten through second grade teacher. Or if you're familiar with that staff, pick out a name.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Ashley, we have one saying they're getting a pop-up about single sign-on. Power School has encountered an issue signing you in with single sign-on.
I haven't seen that either. So some of the more technical issues like that, we're going to have to reach out to the technology department to see what we're having, but make sure you take note of those. You can try to log out and log back in and see if that fixes it. That's all. When I worked in technology, that was my go-to fix.
Actually, if I can interject, if they clear their browser history and then restart Chrome, that may fix it. We've had that issue with teachers here at Southeast.
Awesome.
Perfect, thank you. Amy, Lee, and Timothy, I have written down your names and schools that need to be corrected in Power School, and we'll get that figured out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have, like I said, the attendance form. When we do that at the end, we'll collect any of those concerns and kind of questions, and we'll make sure we give that list to Debbie Harmon to get it fixed. We were working with her yesterday afternoon to make sure, especially for the ITs, all of that was kind of taken care of.
All right, Kelly Nichols, you don't have the Power Teacher Pro button over teacher schedules.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you
So
go in.
so when I look at it, it says new. I have a little blue thing that says new, where Ashley said Power Teacher Pro, so you could actually look at the classes. You know, the schedule, like how they'd set it up. Mine doesn't say that. Mine says new.
Do maybe not have rights yet?
Maybe.
I'll show you. I'll send you a screenshot.
Yeah.
You know.
Ashley, as all of these little kind of tiny things pop up, I'm keeping a running list of who says what.
And that way we can create a document that kind of walks through some of the workarounds for some of them. All right. So Kelly, if you will send that to Pam, we'll make sure that we figure out what's going on for you. Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. All right. So like I said, shadowing becomes really important because that's our first line of defense when we start troubleshooting what's wrong with a teacher's gradebook, especially for some of our new teachers that walk into the classroom. A lot of times they'll forget to check a box or things like that. And that's where we start running into some issues. Or we've had teachers that we've walked them through the setup. It was right. They've gone back in and changed things. And so then the report card at the end of the quarter doesn't print the right way. And so that's always kind of our first line of defense when working with teachers. So if those shadowing rights aren't there, we need to get those fixed for you. All right, so we want to talk briefly, and some of you that have been working with teachers around the standards-based gradebook probably could recite this in your sleep, because for 3 years now we've been kind of going through these steps, but we want to make sure that especially that we all have this set up the right way, especially for remote learning, because parents are going to be more in the habit of logging on, checking behind their students, since the majority of their students' work is going to be done online. So if ever there was a time we needed to make sure that teachers were inputting grades correctly and they were showing up correctly in Power Teacher Pro for parents, it needs to be now. So, and especially for our K2 parents, because really we're not utilizing the standards-based piece in Canvas just because it does not communicate to Power Teacher Pro. They don't talk back and forth. And so all of our grades are going to be put into the Power Teacher Pro gradebook for K2 especially. And so we want to make sure that all these settings are right and that we're all on the same page with this initial setup. And so there are a couple big things that we need to make sure that teachers have done in their gradebook. If teachers have been in K2 for the past year, they were there last year, year before, then their settings should remain the same. They should hold from year to year. I've gone in this morning and I've looked at Ms. Palmer's, and hers are correct from last year. We still like to double check with our teachers, and Cam and myself, we're going to schedule refreshers for all of our K2 teachers at all of our elementary schools just to make sure and touch base and make sure something crazy didn't go on with technology, because technology sometimes does crazy things. So, but if we have new teachers, new hires, or teachers that have moved from 3-5 down to K2, we need to make sure that these settings are changed within their gradebook. And so I'm going to walk you through and show you how to do this. And then if you have your shadowing rights, we're going to go in and actually check behind a teacher. So when I'm back in Miss Palmer's gradebook. Like I said, she's been in kindergarten for several years. We're not actually going to look at any of her student data or anything like that. But over on the left-hand side, you have what they call charms. I don't know how they chose that name, but that is what they call them in Power Teacher. And so under the settings charm, we're going to look at display settings.
I just didn't.
And so settings and display settings, there are a couple of checkboxes that we need to make sure that we pay very close attention to.
Ashley, can we pause for a second?
Yeah.
Can everybody see her screen? Angela Adams, can you see her screen now?
It's just a small icon at the bottom. I just see faces.
I can
Okay,
see.
so you log out of this Teams and log back in.
Okay,
because I think it's a lag on your end.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Cam. So on, somebody else have a question? I'll pause.
No, you're good.
Okay. All right. So under settings, we're going to go to display settings, and there's a checkbox that we need to uncheck. Ms. Palmer's is already unchecked because, like I said, she's been in kindergarten for a few years. Under traditional grades, there is a setting that says show traditional grades. For the majority of our teachers, that's going to be checked initially. We need to uncheck that for our K-2 teachers because they are not using the traditional part of the Power Teacher gradebook. They are only utilizing the standards-based part of it. As you scroll down, there is an option that says auto calculate assignment standards. And there's a drop-down box. For new teachers or teachers that have moved into K2, their default will be new assignments start unchecked. We need to change that to new assignments start checked. Under display settings, those are the two big pieces that we're really looking at that we need to make sure are changed for the standards-based gradebook to work properly. As you can see, I don't have the option to change or do anything to Ms. Palmer's. I can check and uncheck all I want, but I can't change any of her settings because I can't save it. But those are the two big ones. Show traditional grades, we're going to uncheck that box, and auto calculate assignment standards. We're going to change the drop-down menu to new assignment start checked. Those are the two big pieces. Some of you may be furiously writing down notes and then kind of have some anxiety about remembering some of this. There are guides that walk you through this step by step that we're going to make sure you have access to. So don't panic. We just wanted to show you what it looked like and have you go in and look at it as well. All right. I need this to go away. All right, so I want to give you just a moment to make sure you know how to go in and find those settings. So if you have the rights to shadow, I want to give you about 2 minutes to go in and find a teacher and look at those settings. So find a K2 teacher and look to see that those settings are the way they should be. And if you have questions, I can walk you back through those steps. All right, so I'm going to set my timer to keep me on track.
So Kelly Nichols, looking at the screenshot you sent me, it does look like you have not received rights yet. So I'm going to.
Thanks.
Oh my.
Amy Taylor, it does not need to be changed in each section. It's just changed in that settings section, and it will apply to all subject areas.
Great question.
Katrina, to toggle back to another teacher, you'll see that the original tab is still open to the left of that particular teacher, so you'll have to toggle back to your teacher list one tab over. Tracy Landreth asked, it should be start checked, right?
Yes, that's what we want. Yep, assignment, new assignment start checked. Yep. All right. So we're going to look at one more basic setup piece that needs to be in place for teachers as they begin using the standards-based gradebook. So one of the things that happens for elementary school teachers is that certain categories are pushed down from the district to those teachers' gradebooks. In our K2 scenario, we are not utilizing all of those different categories. We are only using a single category. And so what we're going to do is we're going to show you what that category looks like. And there are some assignment defaults for that category that we need to go in and change in order to make sure that the standards-based gradebook or the standard scores calculate properly. Because unlike in a traditional environment where you have a 0 to 100 scale, in your standards-based environment, you have a 1 to 4 scale. As teachers add assignments within their grade books, they attach standards to those assignments. And then as students submit their artifacts of learning, whether that's in small group, whether that's in some kind of virtual setting, something that they snap a picture of and turn into a teacher, whatever the case may be, that artifact then receives a score on a scale from 1 to 4. And we're going to talk about a little bit in just a moment how that 1 to 4 is determined. Teachers have some guiding documents that help them determine what those different levels are as they grade student work. But this is a big difference, especially some of our 3-5 teachers that move down to K2. They're like, oh yeah, I use the Power Teacher Pro gradebook, and that is an advantage, but it does look a little different. So, oh, that thing is driving me crazy. So back in Power Teacher Pro, if I'm ever able to get back there, we're going to look under the A+ grading charm. I'm really going to need this thing to move. So I'm going to go back into Ms. Palmer's class. I've made sure that my settings here are correct. I'm going to go to A+ grading, and I'm going to look at categories. Because like I said, in K2, we only use one category. We have called that one category assessments. In hindsight, I wish that one category were called evidences, because sometimes there's a lot of baggage attached to that word assessment. An assessment does not have to be paper, pencil. In K2 especially, a lot of our assessments of learning happen in small group, and teachers have checklists and things like that they use as assessments of learning. Those are still completely valid forms of learning. And even in a remote environment, if a teacher is working with a small group of students remotely and she's listening for certain things and asking questions and can check those off, that's still a valid form of assessment. We don't want teachers to get hung up on that word and think, oh, I've got to create a paper pencil assessment for every standard. That is not the case. And that's we try to articulate that every time we work with teachers, and we would really That's one of the things we want to be consistent on in our messaging. If a student is working something out on a piece of paper, or they're working with manipulatives in a remote environment, and a parent takes a video and submits it, that could be a form of assessment. It doesn't always have to be paper, pencil, multiple choice. So that's just kind of my soapbox with the word assessment. But you'll see Ms. Palmer has her assessment category there. If I had editing rights, I would have a blue plus button up here at the top that said to add a category. Teachers would need to click that plus to add the category if they are a new hire or if they are moving down to K2. And we'll look at some of these settings that they would need to So when I'm in here, there are a couple settings that I need to make sure that the teacher has changed. So first of all, we want the name assessment here. Some teachers like to change the color. By all means, they can choose whatever color they would like to change. So once they've typed in assessment, we want it active, so it should default to that. We're going to go to assignment defaults. And this is probably one of the areas, Cam, you can chime in too, that we see that causes probably the biggest amount of technology tickets, emails, and things like that, is that teachers don't have this particular piece set up the right way. When we go to assignment defaults, under score type, we want to make sure from the drop-down menu, we have grade scale there. And then under where it has points, we want to have 4, because like I said, in a standards-based environment, we use a 1 to 4 scale. We do not need to mess with any of the other settings on that page. So publish assignments, you can leave it exactly the way it is. We want it to publish those scores and we want it to count. So grade scale and points are the 2 big things there. Once teachers have that default there, they need to go in and make all of their other categories inactive. And just like Cam said before, if you do this once, it's going to apply to all those different classes. So I can go in here to Ms. Palmer's and I can show you. She's gone into all the other district pushed and made them inactive. The only one that she has active. And to make it inactive, all you do is beside of that particular category, you click the edit button and move it to inactive. Okay. So I'm going to pause and give you a moment to go back and look at a teacher's grade book and make sure that they have their one category. If it's a new teacher to K2 or they've moved down, then you know that's a teacher we're going to have to work with to get their grade book set up the right way. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to do that.
And one of the questions that I have received a lot over the last couple of years is, why are we marking the other categories inactive? And that serves 2 purposes. The way your standards-based grades are calculated, they all need to come from the same category because they aren't weighted any differently. The other reason we make them inactive is so that we mitigate any accidental placement of assignments in the wrong category, and then they don't end up showing up. So by making them inactive, it gives teachers the only option they have, or the only place they have to put grades, would be in that assessments category.
All right, we're going to give you just a couple more minutes to go in and check that.
Ashley,
Yes.
this is Katrina. Where do you find the create category? Like I just can't find it.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to see it while you're shadowing because you can't create and make changes. It would live if we were working with teachers, it would be right up here on that blue banner at the top. But like you can see, mine, I don't have it either. It's simply because we have shadow rights and we can't see it. But it would be right up here for teachers.
Okay.
On that blue banner beside of notifications.
Great. Thank you.
No problem. All right. All right. So those are the kind of the big initial setups. And like I've said, if we have K2 teachers who have been in K2 for a little while, those should have held from last year. However, I always like to go back and check. And as the early learning partners and myself, we're gonna work with schools during PLTs or whatever works best for you all to kind of do a refresher for them like we did at the beginning of last year. We'll have them go in and check that as well, just for consistency. We want to make sure that it's set up the right way. We're going to shift gears just a little bit. There is one other technical piece, but as Cam and I were talking, there's not a point in showing you that piece because teachers have not added any assignments and we can't add any assignments. So it would be a moot point right now. But as teachers create assignments, they are going to have to, there's one step that's different from teachers that are in 3.5. They have to go in and attach their standard to the assignment in order for that assignment to be counted toward within the standards-based gradebook. So when we come out to do that refresher, that's something that we will remind teachers of. And then the document that we'll give you at the end of today's session will also have the directions listed in there with screenshots and a video and all of those things for you. If you're used to going in and adding assignments with 3.5, it's just one additional step. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head. But there is one other piece that's a little different. All right, we're going to shift gears just a little bit. And so I want us to think about the standards-based gradebook for those of you who have worked with the standards-based gradebook for the last couple years or last year, whatever the case may be. I want you to think about some of the data that was generated there. And so in the chat, I want you to kind of throw out some of the data, either the teacher data, school level data, parent data, thinking through those lenses, what kind of data does it generate for us? So I want to give you just a couple minutes to do that. And if you don't know, then it would be awesome to look at that chat and see what kind of data it gives us. So I'm going to give you just a second.
Yeah, so it'll help us pre-group our students based on standards, shows us specifically where they need help, individual student mastery of a standard. Class progress of mastery, yes, I love that one, Heather. Look at performance within a standard and group accordingly.
Awesome. Yeah, so even how many times that standard has been assessed, that's
Yes.
always, Cam can attest to this. This is the question probably we get most, how many times do I need to assess a standard? We've been asked that, I don't know how many times. And I think that we always say a good number is 2, but school, just so you have some consistency there, at least 2. And then if a student hasn't reached mastery, then that's part of this standards-based grading process and mastery grading, as this cycle of reteaching, relearning, and reassessing.
I like that. There are lots of people that said student mastery by standard, but we can also look at it from the lens of student progress towards mastery.
Yes. And what
A teacher reflection moment. Did I teach that to the level to allow mastery? Perfect.
Yeah. There's some good
Intentional teaching based on data. Yes.
yeah, so just, and y'all can keep adding to the chat, but we have some screenshots because we don't have data for this year that we can go in and mirror from a teacher. We've pulled some screenshots to show you what some of that data looks like if you're not familiar. And so just like certain people have said, when we go in and we look, I can go into a particular standard and it's going to give me a breakdown of how many students have scored at a level 1, how many students have scored at a level 2, 3, or 4. And it's going to group those students so that if I'm trying to do guided reading groups, guided math groups, do certain interventions, I have some data that I can lean into to help guide that. If I have assessed that in quarter 1 and quarter 2, in both quarters, maybe it's a standard that shows up both times, it's going to show me any growth over time as well. As I look, I also have in here individual student views. And so I can look at this particular standard for this particular student, and we intentionally have cropped out his name. That's why the pictures overlap. But I can see he started up here to level 3, he dipped at a level 2, but he's been pretty consistent at a level 3 the last 3 times that I've assessed that standard. So if I'm trying to do certain interventions and I see that no matter what kind of, or this intervention and my student's still at a level 1, maybe it's time to try something different. Or it could be proof that that intervention worked, whatever it was, if they were at a level 1 or a 2 and we implemented something and now they've been consistently at a level 3. So there's some really good data that I can pull from there to be able to help guide some of the instruction. One of the things we did not talk about as much last year with ifs and principles, that is going to be more of a conversation this year, is there are school level reports that we can pull. So I can go in there and I can look at certain standards and see how many students have scored at a level 1, 2, or 3 school-wide, so that I can see, hey, if we're going to hire tutors or we're going to buy this program, I need to make sure it hits these standards because this is where we need to grow the most. So there are some of those reports. And like I said, that hasn't been something we've talked about as much, but we're definitely going to make sure that we touch on it quite a bit, especially in this remote learning environment, so that we can gauge that level of understanding for our students. So there, again, these are the different reports at the school level. I can see search for standards grades, the breakdown of standards grades for a specific grade level. I can even see how many assignments have been tied to particular standards, and how many grades were given to a standard for a given term. And so some good data there that I could use from the school level as well. And then also thinking about, yep, go ahead.
On those school reports, can IFs pull historical data through those reports as well?
That is a good question that I don't know the answer to. So can you write that down, Cam?
Got it.
And we can do a follow-up email and follow up. You can go in and access those like the historical data, but I don't know if you can still pull those reports. That's a really good question. We'll go back and we'll double check. But even from a parent lens in thinking about what kinds of activities am I working on at home with my student, looking at our old report card versus our new report card, this equips our parents with so much more information. Yes, we know it is new for some of our parents, and at first it can be very overwhelming, just the sheer number. But as parents really get in there and start looking, it does give them quite a bit of information so that not only can they help students at home, but then they can begin advocating for their students as well and asking really good questions about, hey, really, what does this mean, a level 2? At home, I'm seeing X, but apparently we're not seeing the same thing. So it allows for deeper, richer conversation and a better partnership between parents and those teachers. All right. So we've already touched on this just a little bit earlier. But one of the things that we want to really reiterate, and one thing that I think especially some of our pilot schools can attest to this, is when we rolled this out, we used the language of a standards-based report card. And that was the language that we used a whole lot. And that language, because we kept referring to it simply as a standards-based report card, we had teachers that kind of proceeded in the same manner that they always had. They collected data, they waited till the very end to put things in, because that's how we used to do things with our old report cards, is we would gather data in notebooks and things like that. And then at the end of the quarter is when we would go into those old spreadsheets and put them in. And so in using some of that language, I don't think we helped our teachers make the shift between not only is this a new format for report cards, but this is also a process shift for our teachers. We want to make sure that we're following this cycle, that we're teaching, we're gathering information, which could be on paper, it could be checklists and things like that. But after we gather that evidence of learning, we want to make sure that we're entering it into Power Teacher Pro, that we are not waiting until the end of the quarter to go in and to add those grades. And then as we enter that evidence, some of those graphs and that data is being populated for us, and we're using that to plan instruction. And that's kind of our cycle of teaching, assessing, and then reteaching. And the standards-based grading falls in line with that. And we need to be putting these grades in as we go. And for some of our teachers that have been in kindergarten through 2nd grade for a while, that is a shift for them. And it's something that we still continue to have questions and talk to teachers about as we go out into classrooms. So if we could have your help in reiterating that process, that we're putting those grades in as we go, so that Power Teacher is gathering that information, it's analyzing it for us, so that it's easier to use, so that we can plan instruction effectively. And also, just to reiterate what I said earlier, in this remote learning environment, parents are going to be online more. And so if grades aren't showing up, we are going to start getting questions. And so helping teachers with that process is going to be really important. And so then that's one of the questions we always get when we start talking about this, is then how do I assess student learning? What resources do I have out there? So I want us to take a second. We're getting ready to wrap things up, but I want us to take a second to think about this question. What methods, especially thinking from a K-2 lens, can I use to assess student learning? So I want you to think about that and then throw some of your answers in the chat for us.
So we have mentions of observations, question answers, student demonstration, tickets out the door, checklist for observations.
Creation and conferencing, absolutely.
Student creative videos, yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah, especially for this remote environment, right? When we're not necessarily in the classroom with the student all day long, some of those videos might become really important. All right, so there are all kinds of ways that we can assess student learning. It does not have to be a paper, pencil created multiple choice assessment. It could be students working with manipulatives. Someone mentioned creating. It could be something that a student's created, either digitally or on paper. It could be recorded videos, conferencing, those small group question answers. All of those things can be used to assess student learning. What we always tell teachers is to make sure if you use checklists or things like that, to make sure you hold on to those, because if parents have questions, we want to be able to articulate how we did assess it. Those are all valid forms of assessment. We just want you to make sure teachers can articulate the way in which they assessed. And so just some things to consider as we kind of wrap up. Does the way in which we assess standards have to be the same every time? Or can we use multiple forms of assessments? Also, from a district lens, when assessing standards, what resources? I know some of our content area folks had some of their UPOs created. They went back and rewrote them when they found out that we were in Plan C to make sure that they added multiple digital resources and ways to assess. And so some of those district created resources are going to be really important as we move forward. Also, Cam and I are going to come out, like I said, not just Cam and I, OEL partners in general, those early learning partners are going to come out and do a refresher. And as part of that refresher, we're going to talk about, especially in a remote environment, what types of data can we pull? What's possible in Canvas? How do we make this easy for K-2 teachers and students so that we are continuing with that teaching and learning cycle? And then this is a big one that we always get. Do all students have to be assessed the same number of times per standard? And so I already see in all caps a no in the chat. And I definitely agree. We don't have to assess all students the same number of times. And that goes back to that idea of mastery learning. Not all students are going to master content at the same time or in the same way. And so if I have students who I'm pulling them in guided reading or guided math and working with them and spiraling content they may be assessed more than some of their other classmates who progress faster on that particular standard. We know that all students come to us with different readiness levels for different standards because all of our students have different backgrounds. They have different interests. And so because of that, the way in which they learn, the pace in which they learn is going to be different. So that's a question we always get. Do they have to be assessed the same number of times? And the answer is no. And there are some tips and tricks that we like to teach teachers on how to duplicate assignments and things like that, so that if they're reassessing, they don't necessarily have to retype every single time. And so those are things when we come out to the refresher, we'll kind of remind teachers about, but they're also in the document that we're going to share here in just a moment. And then last but not least, how do we know what to assess, when, and what those varying levels are? And so each content lead has created their quarterly planning documents. Again, those will be available. Some of them are already on the content websites or Canvas sites. And then they have those rubrics to help guide what should be a level 1, what should be a level 2, a level 3, and a level 4. So those documents are going to be made available if they are not already. I've already mentioned this in the IF meeting, but I will say it again. Elementary ELA, some of those resources are not going to be available right away. The quarterly planning documents, I think, are pretty much finalized, and they are, but some of the rubrics, just because of the way they've had to redesign UPOs at the last minute and the late adoption of Wonders, those are going to take, those have taken just a little bit longer to create. So, but all of those resources are going to be made available. One thing that'll be different this year is those resources are going to live on the content sites as well as a Canvas course for standards-based grading. So they're going to live in multiple places to make it easy for teachers. Like if I'm in the social studies site already looking for something and I want to access their standards-based grading resources, I can do that. And then if I know specifically I have a question about standards-based grading and I want to go to the standards-based grading Canvas site, I can go there as well. That site should be live. The Canvas standards-based grading site should be live by the end of next week. With
Ashley, I'm doing one more quick correlation today of the ELA quarterly planning guides just to make sure that they are correct based on UPO changes.
Yep, and those should be ready to rock and roll, even if the rubrics are not. And so, like I said, the SBG site will be available by the end of next week. I will send out a mass email to everyone letting them know that it's there and it's ready. With the Summer of Learning course and having to create and facilitate that has been the majority of my summer. And so now we're kind of shifting that focus. But all of those resources, teachers, IFs, and now ITs will also be able to provide feedback just like last year. We'll have that feedback form. And so all of those resources will live on that Canvas site once it goes live. All right. So I know we're at the end of our time. I want to go ahead and give you all your attendance sheet for today, mainly to really, if there are people that were not able to access some of their rights, I want to make sure that we have a list of that. I know Cam was writing it down as well, but I'm going to put the link in the chat to a Google form for you to fill out. And that's how we'll take attendance for today. If my teams will cooperate. And really slow. Come on. And then one of the last things that we'll go ahead and throw in the chat is the link to we call it our cheat sheet, is what we call it. And I'll throw the link to that in there just so you have access. It will also be on the Canvas SBG site, but just so if you have questions, you can go ahead and take a look at it. So I'll throw that in the chat as well. All right, if there are no big questions, you are free to go. I can hang out for just a few minutes for those of you who may have some questions you would like to ask, which we may or may not have the answer to in full disclosure.
Hey, Christy Fowler, to get to the other core subject courses, if you click on the help button in Canvas, in that pop-up at the top, it says curriculum resources. Click that, and then at the bottom, you'll have access to all the different core resource Canvas pages.
Awesome.
Thank you. I just wasn't sure about that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I hope you all have a great rest of the day. You can always email me or any of the early learning partners. We've kind of been in this work for a little while now. So if you've got questions, please reach out.
Hey, Ashley, it's Melissa Rearshide, and I'm the new IT at the downtown school.
Hey, how are you?
Very good, thanks. So we have several different grading scenarios going on there. So I just want to clarify. Are you still on, Nicole?
No, it was Cameron.
Oh,
Yeah, Cameron's worked with the downtown school quite a bit.
Okay, excellent. So you girls are going to be on my speed dial. So I just want to make sure I've made it clear to them that I went through and shadowed. It looks like my K2 folks have that piece there. I think my clarity is on the Canvas end when they're trying to do assignments and things over there, because so then just clarify my thinking, those are not going to connect. They are not going to talk to each other. Okay.
No, and I've reached out to Canvas multiple times to make sure that's true and to kind of see where that's at in development for them, because that would be awesome.
Yeah.
If they could simply grade things in Canvas and then it push up and right up to the Power Teacher Pro grade book. It is not there, and it probably will not be there for a while, just because of some of the other things that are in development for them. But I have reached out multiple times just to confirm.
Okay. I just want to be clear to those folks, because I don't want them to think that something's going somewhere it's not. The other thing is, if they were to choose to do some assignments and do some things over there, just as a data collection piece, we could hide grades, right? So that parents wouldn't see their basically formative assessment.
Yeah, so if you're wanting it to be in there, it's not necessarily an evidence of learning. So this is another thing.
Sure.
Yeah. So I did standards-based grading in middle school. So there are some pieces that we do in the classroom, right, that are formative, that are practice. Still might be good data to have. You would just need to change some of the settings in there, and we can talk about how you would want to do that.
Okay, because I'm thinking, they could do their video, like in that assignment piece, they could do some demonstration, right? And that they might want to use that as part of their evidence of learning. So, okay, that would be great. It does not need to be today, but I would love to talk with you all about that.
Yeah, we can touch base about some of the different settings in there as they add assignments and things like that. We absolutely can.
And Melissa, just so you know, I am your early learning partner for downtown.
Excellent. Okay.
Yep. So I will be your person for all things K2 and Wonders K5.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds a little scary when I say it out loud. But one thing that I'm going to go and check, because of the fact that your second grade teachers have just looped down from third grade, in years past, that setting for SBG and Power Teacher Pro gets a little wonky. And it was still wonky in the spring when we looked at it because they were still registered as third grade teachers. So that's on my list of things to do today to check for them.
Okay. Wonderful. And that will be perfect. Just let me know and I'll go in there and look too. That'll be great.
Perfect.
Thanks so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks.